Hello and welcome to Premier Study in Investing. It's great to have you. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, good morning. Well, Moderna news details. Hey, this is a biggie. Moderna receives U.S. FDA approval for a COVID-19 vaccine they're going to call the mNexSpike. So this is on May 31st. It's a really interesting opening line, which I don't know if that tells us the whole story. You know, Moderna gets to choose whatever they want to put in their investor news reports, but it's a new vaccine. It's for use in all adults who are 65 years and older, everybody, as well as individuals aged 12 to 64 years old with at least one or more underlying risk factors as defined by the CDC guidelines. I will go ahead and put up a image that we took from the recent Martin Makary and Vinay Prasad. It's in the New England Journal of Medicine. It's called An Evidence-Based Approach for COVID-19 Vaccination by Vinay Prasad and Martin Makary. And so what we saw in that press release seemed to match, as you can see at the top, CDC 2025 list of underlying medical conditions that increase a person's risk of severe COVID-19. Now, I have mentioned in the past that I have some issue. In Vinay Prasad's own words, it's a very broad definition, but some of the things that are interesting, asthma. A lot of people have had some sort of asthma when they're growing up. Some of the other ones are like more reasonable, heart failure, lung diseases, of course. But some of the ones that seem to really kind of broaden it out to a lot more people is obesity. So, I'm an American. I live in America. I don't live in a necessarily super healthy part of America, and or where health consciousness is really high, like it is in Oregon and places like this. So obesity, physical inactivity. What does that mean? I have no idea what the stats are on the number of people that exercise, pregnant and recent pregnancy, smoking, current or former. A lot of people have probably smoked at some point in their life. I know if you're younger, it's not as popular as it used to be, but for a lot of people, it was common. It was definitely before it was banned in public. It was a lot of people smoked. So, okay. So in this basically test, what they did was they ran it with some people getting the new version, this mNexSpike called mRNA 1283, or the standard 50 microgram dose of the old Spikevax. And what they found was that this new next gen or mNexSpike showed a 9.3% higher relative vaccine efficacy compared to the Spikevax for people aged 12 years and older, and 13% higher relative vaccine efficacy than in adults aged 65 years and older. Now, this is a troubling thing here, that they found that there was fewer local reactions but comparable systemic reactions. So if you saw my last video, or you were aware of the Senator Johnson failure to warn hearing or paper that they put out in combination, they definitely had a representative from I think a organization called React 19, which was vaccine injured. And so I would say that somebody like Dr. Peter McCullough, would have a huge problem with this comparable systemic reactions. Let me put up another image here. So now you'll see on the screen a image taken from study 301, safety set. Similar frequency of unsolicited adverse events within 28 days after injection, regardless of relationship to vaccine, between mRNA 1283, the one that was just approved here on Saturday, and Spikevax, the older. And what we saw, similar frequency, so adverse events, so 12% of people had some adverse event in both groups. Serious was small, but, serious. Either 0 or 1 fatality out of sample sizes of about 5,700 people. But medically attended adverse events, 7% in both groups. To me, that's nuts. To me, I was honestly very, very surprised that this was given approval based on those numbers. But it was. It was given approval. So what's going to happen on Monday, I can only speculate. I think that it's reasonable to see this definitely go above 30. So it says here at the top of this press release that came, most recent close was $26.56. Definitely would go above 30. I think, back to when RSV vaccine was approved for this company in the summer of 2024 and had a 60% run up from $100 to $160. I don't think we're going to see that kind of move. I mean, 60% run up from where we are today is like $42, $43. The reason I don't think that is going to happen is, one, it's not a new disease. This sort of cannibalizes, in my opinion, products that they already have on the market. Plus, it seems like people, from almost everything I hear, is that really COVID is very infrequently giving people problems compared to like Alpha or like the Delta variant, especially. Ever since we've hit Omicron and all of those lineages off of Omicron, doesn't seem like it's been a big deal. Now, okay, so I guess I'll admit that in my last video, I said that I don't think this company is going to see a share price above $30, and be able to hold it in the rest of 2025. I'll probably be proved wrong on Monday. I would say high 30s. I'm just gonna make a guess. So I think we could see that. Will it hold? I don't know. A lot of people might be wanting to get out of this thing. So that will be really, really interesting on Monday. But the thing that I do think I was right about in my last video, I felt kind of crazy saying it, but what I said was I don't think they're going to be pulling these products for the next 10 years. And I said that because of the Senator Johnson hearing was just all over the place. You had obviously these billboards at the end of it, and I love his expression. If you look at this video, he's obviously like perturbed by these signs in the background. But really the hearing was all over the place. The hearing was supposed to be about a failure to warn people about myocarditis and pericarditis, the clear signal that came out in 2021 that was suppressed or not shared with the public, even though regulators and the Biden administration knew it in 2021. They didn't really say anything. It wasn't until recently that we needed to have new warning labeling on the packaging. But when you really got into listening to the 3 and almost half hour hearing, man, it was everything under the sun related to masks, school lockdowns, what happened in Hawaii, what toxic spike, did the vaccine provide any protection? I mean, it was everything. Vaccine injured, pregnant women, and something like over 80% of women having stillbirths who received this, according to one doctor that worked primarily with pregnant women and their unborn children. And so there are some risks that you should probably know about if you're thinking. And so what we see here, you should not get this product if you had a severe allergic reaction to a previous dose of either this product or the original COVID-19 vaccine, or any Moderna COVID-19 vaccine, or to any ingredients in these vaccines. What's the risks? It says that you could have trouble breathing, swelling of the face, throat, fast heartbeat, rash all over the body, dizziness or weakness. Then they actually do talk about myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart muscle, or pericarditis, inflammation of the lining outside the heart that have occurred in some people who received mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. I guess that would mean both versions. Most commonly occurred in males 12 to 24 years old, and you should seek medical attention right away if you or your child has any of the following symptoms after receiving the vaccine, particularly during the 2 weeks after receiving a dose of the vaccine. So chest pain, shortness of breath, feeling of having a fast beating, fluttering or pounding heart, and other things could be injection site pain, tenderness, swelling of the lymph nodes in the same arm of the injection, swelling, hardness, and redness. General side effects could be fatigue, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, chills, nausea, vomiting, and fever. Tell your vaccine provider if you have any medical conditions that would include any allergies, severe allergic reactions after receiving any other doses of COVID-19 vaccine. If you have had myocarditis or pericarditis, if you have a fever when you go to get the injection, have bleeding disorder or on a blood thinner, are immunocompromised or on a medicine that affects your immune system, pregnant or plan to become pregnant, breastfeeding, have received any COVID-19 vaccine, have ever fainted in association with an injection. Now, the thing that I think that I'm going to show you that I was actually right about, although, yeah, I said in my last video, I think these are going to be on the market for 10 years. Let me show you how that seems to be probably reasonable. we're going to go look here at actually the actual letter that came from Food and Drug Administration to Moderna. It came out on, let's move this, May 30th, 2025. So this is Friday. Now, this is interesting. This product is approved for use in individuals who have been previously vaccinated with any COVID-19 vaccine and are 65 years of age or older, or 12 to 64 years of age with at least one underlying condition that puts them at high risk for severe outcomes. So that's pretty much what the press release said. But if we go down here further, we're going to see that there's these post-marketing trials. Okay, that could run up until 2035, 10 years into the future. So that's the plan. That looks like the plan. Let me show you it. Before we get there, a couple other important points. I think some people will have a heyday on, but advisory committee. We did not refer your application to the vaccine and related biological product advisory committee because our review of information submitted in your BLA, including the clinical study design and trial results, did not raise concerns or controversial issues that would have benefited from an advisory committee discussion. That's really amazing to me. I think for the bulls, wow. There is, of course, an argument about the safety profile and the risk benefit. And I honestly believe that Peter McCullough, Robert Malone, the folks that are saying, hey, this is way, way too dangerous. This is a brand new technology. We have biodistribution problems. We have toxicity with spike. We have contamination with DNA that was talked about. We've seen that before with Florida. But also there was a paper that if you go to the mRNA site, he covered how a bunch of high school students got a paper showing DNA contamination it was peer-reviewed paper, got into a journal. So obviously they got help, he thinks, from some more advanced professionals. But it was sort of like, I think the message was, hey, if high schoolers can figure this out, I think the rest of us adults can as well. This is a problem. What else? The gentleman, Nikola Rashik, on the Mayor Genomics channel, he also has talked a lot about IgG4 increases. And if that increases in a person, it basically dampers the immune system. And so there's speculation of that's why a lot of people are getting COVID over and over again, or other diseases, or even possibly cancers, colon cancers in young kids. I feel that those folks have kind of won the arguments as far as the risks are very, very elevated. For the average person, it would push it into the realm of probably too much risk for a disease that really doesn't seem to be bothering most people. I know that's a generalization, but that's my opinion. But the other side of this whole investment is really, what will regulators do? And it's a lot more about how deep ingrained is Big Pharma into the regulatory apparatus. And when I see things like this, it really is a signal to me. And I think if I was buying shares and wanting to hold this for a long time, the next 10 years, this advisory committee statement tells me that people are looking the other way on something that you would expect is been highly debated about the safety of mRNA tech. To me, that's a wow. That's a wow, and that's a win for people that are bullish, especially long-term bulls. Okay. Here it talks about, it needs to be long-term super cold storage, then refrigerated. Protocols, they need to report right away. Biological product deviations if they change anything, which I don't know if they're going to do that PCR manufacturing process in the trials and then switch over to those large E. coli batches like we've been talking about with the spike vax. So that could be a potential issue, but it says very much if they change the distribution or the labeling, storage, process, testing, packaging, if they basically change anything, they need to send in a written report saying that they did so. You can see that maybe more here. Manufacturing changes, labeling. This is sort of interesting. You must submit adverse experience reports in accordance with the adverse experience reporting requirements for licensed biological products. In addition to reporting requirements, you must submit adverse experience reports for myocarditis and pericarditis as 15-day expedited reports to the VAERS system. So that's pretty interesting. They are responsible to do that. I don't know if they have been doing that or have been required to do that previously. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting and why I'm we'll look at some of these studies for pediatric requirements. Now, you know, on the press release and on the top of this, it says it's just basically available for people 12 years and older. Well, we're going to start to look at what about the under 12 crowd. It says, so the Pediatric Research Equity Act, under that act, all applications for new active ingredients, new indications, new dosage forms, new dosing regimes, or new routes of administration are required to contain an assessment of safety and effectiveness of the product for a claimed indication in pediatric patients unless this requirement is waived, deferred, or inapplicable. I don't know. That's weird that it can even be waived, deferred, or inapplicable, but that's what it says. We are deferring submission. Interesting. Going to put it off till later. We are deferring submission of your pediatric studies for age less than 12 years for this application because this product is ready for approval for use in adults and children over 12 years of age, and the pediatric studies in less than 12 years of age have not been completed. Okay, so you can't apply because you haven't completed the studies. That seems fair. Okay. Your deferred pediatric studies required under this section of the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act, okay, they're going to call that the FDCA, are required post-marketing studies. So I suppose that must be post-marketing studies of what they're giving to the adults. So because my definition of post-marketing study is you're allowed to sell, you're allowed to give it to patients who are eligible, but you got to collect and analyze additional data on any occurrences that happen. That's part of the thing that is put on the drug maker, the vaccine maker. Okay, so the status of these post-marketing studies must be reported according to these different sections. You have to report annually on the status of any post-marketing commitments or required studies or clinical trials. Now, label your annual report as such. It should say annual status report of post-marketing study requirement and commitment, and submit it to the FDA each year within 60 calendar days of the anniversary date of this letter until all requirements and commitments subject to the report requirement under this section of this FDCA are released or fulfilled. And here's what are going to be required of these studies. Point number 1, you need to do this. Deferred pediatric studies under the PREA, mRNA 1283, this is the mNexSpike, -P302. This is going to probably be a study group, maybe similar to, anyway, it has to do with pediatrics, obviously, to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of this in infants and children from the ages of 6 months to under 11, so under 12, so 6 months to 11-year-olds inclusive. All right, so final protocol submission. It's got to be in by January of 2026. Need to wrap up the study by the end of 2029 and submit a final report by the summer of 2030. So that's 5 years. Okay, that's interesting. Deferred pediatric study under this to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of in neonates and infants. So these are people under 6 months of age for prevention of COVID-19. Final protocol submission. It needs to be submitted by 2030, spring of 2030. You got to complete the study by the end of 2034 and need to turn in a final report by the summer of 2035, 10 years from now. So, to me, what this says, and what you probably didn't hear on a lot of the headlines in other places, because who wants to go and read these, letters directly, is that clearly the FDA is saying, well, let's put together a plan where these are going to be approved products for the next 10 years. Now, yeah, it's just a plan, but this came from the FDA. So I think for those of you who are asking those questions, should we buy at mid-20s or whatever and try to hold this for the next 10 years and play it for the next pandemic or the next biological warfare scenario or whatever? To me, this says a lot. To me, this says that there is definitely interest from the FDA in continuing to study and approve these things. For the next 10 years. So this is sort of interesting. Under the post-marketing requirements for this section, it says we have determined that an analysis of spontaneous post-marketing adverse events reported under this other section will not be sufficient to assess the known serious risks of myocarditis and pericarditis. So there are serious risks, they're known. Furthermore, an active post-marketing risk identification analysis system, as available under this other section, will not be sufficient to assess these serious risks. So, what's going to happen? Therefore, based on the appropriate scientific data, we would determine that you are required to conduct the following studies. Post-marketing retrospective cohort study utilizing commercial and Medicare claims databases to evaluate the occurrence of myocarditis and pericarditis following the administration of mNexSpike in the United States. Ooh, okay. All right, I don't know, Medicare claims and commercial claims. I don't know, how are they supposed to get a hold of that information? We acknowledge the timetable you submitted. Where basically the final submission would be due in 2029. And then it says also there's a post-marketing retrospective cohort study using administrative claims and health system medical records to evaluate long-term sequelae of myocarditis following administration of this product compared to myocarditis in patients who had not received this product. Participants will have at least 5 years of follow-up for long-term outcomes of myocarditis. We acknowledge your timeline that you submitted in April of 2025. And it states that basically what you're going to do is you're going to put together a final protocol submission by November in 2025, and you're going to complete the study in 2033, and that the final report on all of that will be due in 2034, 9 years into the future. Please submit the protocols of this with cross-reference letters to this BLA. Okay, so then it basically tells them, you need to send it in. Now it's interesting, this language required, and required. Because sometimes when I listen to Vinay Prasad, especially on the FDA, like if you listen to him here, check this out.
If it concludes, based on the available scientific evidence, the benefit to harm balance is favorable, and we simply need more data to have that confidence for younger individuals at low risk of severe disease. We have to do our duty here too at the FDA. The FDA is committed, and let me say this very clearly, we are committed to ensuring companies generate that evidence, and we strongly suggest they complete any agreed upon post-marketing studies.
Why is he saying we strongly suggest? Who's in charge here? Honestly, who is calling the shots when he says things like we strongly suggest and we really recommend that you complete these post-marketing studies? Man. One last thing that's really interesting. So this says this is the new FDA regulatory framework, and it seems like that there is, I don't know if there's some dispute between the FDA and the CDC on this, but if you look on this, which they put out in the Prasad and McCary article that I referenced earlier, these folks, they're allowed to take it, basically. They're eligible. 65 years old, or this is under 65 with at least one risk factor. So that's a lot of adults, okay, especially given how wide and broad I thought that the serious risk factor list was. So that's going to include a lot of people. But here, age 50 to 64, FDA mandated post-marketing trials. Post-marketing. When you come down here, this is any age 6 months to 64. They're talking about sponsor-driven randomized placebo-controlled trials. So when I look at this image, it may be oversimplified, but the only place where I see post-marketing trials occurring is between age 50 and 64-year-olds. All this down here is apparently, as we've been told in May 2025, something quite different. We need randomized placebo-controlled trials. Well, that is certainly not what we're seeing in this letter. There's post-marketing all over this stuff for young children. We're not seeing anything really about you need to do placebo-controlled trials or any such thing. This is a lot of talk about post-marketing. So I think that's interesting. I think that's something worth knowing about. So I don't know what to say. It seems to me that there must be some infighting, or that this letter does not coincide with the information that we got from the FDA, and how they're going to move forward with COVID-19 products. So, anyways, a price action could go anywhere on Monday. I want to be really respectful of people that are vaccine injured and or lost their jobs or have had loved ones die, or just feel that this whole thing was, like Senator Johnson and other people, very, very deeply upset, having faced serious loss of, character defamation, or, being kicked out of families, or, not invited to things, or et cetera, et cetera. Like, this is not just we're not just talking about macaroni and cheese, Kraft Heinz, what's their stock worth. I mean, this kind of it touches on some sacred places for people, and I understand that, and I want to respect that. I just think that when I look at this, long term, this is a huge win. Things could always change, but I think bullish people, based on this, who are wanting to hold actual shares, I'm not, but wanting to hold actual shares long term, I think this is good news for that thesis. As far as what happened on Monday, I mean, it's like less than 24 hours away at this point of making this video. I say, just on symbolic nature, that's worth 10%. I think this new vaccine does sort of have a cannibalizing effect, because I don't know, in my mind, it's not much different than a booster. I don't understand exactly, besides you're having a lower dose in terms of micrograms, but you're also having, seems like, similar adverse events. I don't know what the difference is or what the advantage is. I really don't, So, and that's one of the hard parts about investing in biotech when you don't have a medical background. So what I'm going to say is that this is basically going to cannibalize our own product, which is already crashing in terms of revenue projected. We did have the $766 million grant that was previously awarded to Moderna for bird flu. That was rescinded or taken back or canceled, and so that's a lot of money. That's $750 million for a company that is only expecting to make something like, analysts say, $2 billion in all of 2025. So don't forget, June 12th is the next news coming out, and this is for RSV for high risk adults 18 to 64 years old, I believe. So you can look for that. I mean, June 12th is another big day. And then otherwise, I don't really see any big news coming out in 2025. So you can go back and look at the Senator Johnson hearing. But because of the chaotic nature and the ability of people on both sides of this issue to come up with complete opposite conclusions, and I think that whoever is wrong, the ability to obfuscate and sort of clutter and confuse and say, well, we did what was best based on what we knew at that time, and it was probably the right call, and to not jeopardize anyone, their own, to plead the fifth, to not, jeopardize their own careers by going, out publicly and saying, this was wrong, this doesn't work, that's obviously not going to happen. And so, I think Senator Johnson, God bless his soul for trying to do the right thing, have important conversations. The truth is that he said at the end of that hearing that he was up against a cartel, some kind of drug cartel that had the power, that had the money, that had the media, and that he was finally in 2025, after FOIA requests and all this stuff, able to start having a conversation without censorship and having being threatened and coerced and all these character defamation things. I think that's the reality of how you have to look at it, that even if the people that are saying this is too dangerous, with all of their pile of studies and stuff, there's a lot of very smart people that are saying this is so messed up, and to be able to sort it out is just going to take forever. I mean, that's how it appears to me. So, you can look at it however you want, but this is some interesting information that looks like FDA plans to continue to work towards approvals for anyone down to 6 months, and they have a plan over the next 10 years to continue selling this, looking at the results, doing the reports, but there's no mention of, from this about these products being pulled. All right, thanks so much. Good luck to all, and we'll see you next time.